Hi everyone, welcome to Techweek TV, brought to you by Callaghan Innovation. Super excited to have you joining us this morning. Today in this session we're going to be exploring parenting in the social media age, and I have some awesome panellists here with us today. Sean Lyons, the Director of Technology and Partnerships for NetSafe, and Kieran Tubbs, the co-founder of Sticks and Stones. How are you guys?
Very well, thanks for having us.
Thank you. Awesome. So what we're going to do is maybe if you could just briefly explain what you each do, and then we'll go to your presentation.
Sure. So I'm Sean Lyons. I work for NetSafe. NetSafe is an independent non-profit organisation. We've been around since 1998, which pretty much puts us there at the start of the internet. Our entire focus is on helping New Zealanders use technology in a way that utilises all the benefits that brings, but doing that in a safe way. So we're out there to support people both kind of ahead of time, but also to offer kind of reactive support when people experience trouble online as they use it.
Awesome. And I'm Kieran. I'm a third year law student at Victoria University. I was a founding member of Sticks and Stones, which is a completely youth-led initiative to make bullying a thing of the past, and I was also the founder and project manager for Icon, which is an online web tool for young people to sort of take control of the online space.
Awesome. Okay, Sean, we're going to go to your presentation.
Great. Okay. So look, I just wanted to, under this kind of heading, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what it means to be, I guess, a parent to some extent in the online space when your young people are utilising social media. So for those of you who don't know, NetSafe, like I say, has been around for quite some time. We offer support to everybody in New Zealand when they use online tools. So not just an agency for young people, but also an agency for parents too. And I thought it's probably a good way to start to try and explain to you that the way that some parents feel about technology, feel about social media. So when we talk to a lot of parents, when they think about the way that their young people use technology online, they think that online is quite a scary place and it's full of scary people. Well, actually, maybe that's more, no, but let's go with that. That's what we mean by scary people. And when you put together parents, young people, technology, it often invokes some of those feelings of fear. What that then means for a lot of parents, that obviously they want to give their young people the best possible experience, but they often feel like they are kind of the last line of defence when it comes to looking after young people online. So I think it's a good idea to try and give parents that might be feeling that way some idea about how it is that young people feel about the technologies from young people that we've spoken to, from research that's out there, and I thought I'd try and capture some of those ideas quite quickly. First thing to say is that most young people think online is quite a cool space. And I couldn't think of anything cooler than the Fonz, but that kind of is me showing my age. But that they generally think of online as a safe and happy space to be in. They also feel generally that adults kind of overstate the risks, that things don't actually ever really get to the as bad as adults feel they do when it comes to the harm or the challenges online. And we're also seeing a kind of increased sort of apathy, I guess, towards the messages that adults often portray about how dangerous and how difficult it is to be online, because for a lot of young people, that simply isn't the experience that they have, which is really challenging for organisations like ours, as a largely adult organisation, but also to parents themselves when they try and have those discussions with young people about what it is to be online. What we do know is that when adults do talk to young people, often what they try and do is fix the problem. Parents see their young people as having a problem and they try and fix it, which is difficult for most young people to kind of take in. What they want to see is practical steps that they can work with. They want people to help them form a solution, and they actually want to try things that will experiment things that will actually work within their context, things that will actually work for them, not just somebody's idea of a patch job to fix up the situation they currently find themselves in. So what that means is we end up with some of those kind of traditional pieces of advice that a lot of parents might think they want to use, being a little bit out of step in terms of what it is that what young people actually need to hear from you as a parent. What we actually have here is a little bit of a paradox, much like the Swedish furniture paradox. Looks beautifully simple, but then comes home in a box and needs a degree in physics to actually reassemble. What we're looking at here is the difference between what parents actually think they want and what they actually need to do to support young people online. So if you think about this as a kind of model, as a parent you want young people to be safe online, so you think, right, what they need is more restrictions, and the more I restrict them, the less risk that they will face, and therefore they will become safer. Now it sounds like a logical model. It's what we've been doing for a long time, but basically it just doesn't really work, because I think what we're looking for in the first thing is probably not quite right. What we're actually looking for young people to be as parents is more capable. We want them to be able to manage the challenges that they experience online better. We're actually looking for that increased capability. To get that, what we need to do is give them more opportunity. But more opportunity leads to more challenge. But it's only with that opportunity and challenge that young people get to experience the online spaces, work out for themselves with help how to fix that, and then become more capable. That's actually the kind of loop that we're looking for. The other loops we're more comfortable with in terms of road safety, water safety. Obviously we don't want people to take a risk when they're crossing roads. We don't want people to be a little bit dangerous in their crossing roads in order to get a little bit hit by a car and then do a little bit of learning. But it's not applicable in the online space, because without experiencing some of those challenges, then none of us actually learn particularly well. The trouble is, obviously, that requires, as a parent, a fairly significant leap of faith, because it's natural to say, well, if there's danger out there, if there's problems out there, if there's risk out there, the best thing for me to do is just remove my child from that risk and then everything will be fine. But if we don't take that leap of faith, if we don't do that and don't allow them to experience some of those challenges, then the likelihood is they won't experience the lessons to help them grow and deal with those things at the early ages that we require them to, which will mean they'll be permanently deficit in terms of learning how to manage themselves as they grow. But obviously there are things that we don't necessarily want to experiment with, and the safety of our children or DIY submarines is probably a really good example of things that we don't. We don't want open slather experiment. We don't just want to throw our children to the lions and say, hey, look, there's a whole lot of stuff going on online. Just go and experience it and you'll learn loads of stuff and it'll be fine. Because that's also too far the other way in terms of that. That's not just a leap of faith. That's actually just pile driving straight down into the concrete. What young people actually need in that process, and that's what's missing from that kind of simplified diagram, is the right kind of support at the right time. That's the right kind of supportive environment, both technological and physical, emotional environment. It also means that the people that young people are seeking out for that support need to be aware and knowledgeable and a little bit ready to kind of sharpen, take a breath and leap in and learn with young people at the same time as they are. That support is an absolutely critical part of young people's development in this space, and it's support that comes from an awful lot of areas. So, as parents, what can you do? I love this sign. I'm not sure where the first picture came from, but clearly it's a sign that was written by somebody from a previous generation. But there are things that you can do to support young people, and some of that is just about being aware, and some of that is taking actual definitive action yourself. Because for a long time, We've had kind of anecdotal evidence about the impact of online spaces, and often people fall into two camps around this. Either the kind of it's all terrible for young people, and we should take them off, they shouldn't be using any kind of social media, the later the better. And then there's kind of the blind faith element, which is, I'm sure they're all going to be fine, everything's going to be all right. And the truth is, the actual position is probably somewhere right in the middle of that. But there are increasingly little snippets of evidence that suggest that just kind of, let's just leave them to it, I'm sure they'll be okay, is not proving to be the best policy for young people themselves. So, like I said, we're beginning to see small pieces of metrics. As an example, so if you compare a young person now to their counterpart 20 years ago, they are spending 20% less time physically with their friends. They're 15% less likely to drive than their counterparts of 20 years ago. And they're 20% less likely to be involved in a romantic relationship than their counterparts were 20 years ago. So small measures, but also potentially measures that what we're seeing is a social shift in that period of time, and perhaps some of that can be left at the door of people's desire to engage and relate online. But certainly we are seeing shifts in society for young people that have to be explained somehow. We do know that mental health issues, loneliness and depression are at an all-time high. That's not just in young people, but also in adults as well. So that there are these measures out there that are suggesting that perhaps they're just leaving everything as is, just saying everything's going to be okay, is probably not the right thing for us to do, especially when it comes to young people and the use of technology. But it's a tightrope that we are walking. Okay, so effectively, yes, we want to protect young people, yes, we want to take action, but we know also that young people are saying, don't do all this for us, and I think that's quite right. Talk to us about it, help us to find the solutions, support us when we try to do these things, but don't just jump in on top and railroad us, because that's not what we want, and we know that's not what helps them learn. So there are some things that parents need to be conscious of. That technology looks differently to us as older people. I'm a parent. I know that my view of technology looks very different to my teenage children's, but also my view of the solutions to the problems they have looks different, and sometimes I probably railroad them in terms of, well, I know how to fix this, I know how to fix this. But we need to be really conscious as young people come to us, as our kids come to us and say, I have these problems, or I have this challenge, what can I do? They're not necessarily looking for you to say, step aside, I'm in. What they're looking for you to do is support them and go along that journey with them. Look, that's not to say that the stuff that you have done as a parent up to this point is a load of rubbish. It's not. The support and help, the interest that you have in what it is the young people are doing, the fact that you are open to conversation, the fact that you are there to listen, the fact that they are coming to you to say that they have an issue or that they have a challenge is a really big step, and something you should pat yourself on the back for. Because we know there are lots of young people out there that feel like they don't have anywhere to go. They don't have the right people to talk to. They don't have the right support. So don't think that everything you've done up until now is wasted. But do keep endeavouring to help your young people as they manage and navigate these challenges. NetSafe as an organisation has had to metamorphose in the last 5 or 10 years. So originally we were an agency of just education. We now have a much bigger reactive response service. We now know that we do need to help people. It's not just about preparation ahead of time. We need to help people as they have these challenges. It's the same for parents. You have to prepare yourself to be that person to assist. Even if you don't necessarily know the difference between Snapchat and Instagram, it doesn't mean that you can't necessarily step in and say, hey, I might not know the names of these platforms, but tell me about the problems that you're having, let me understand what it is that you're doing, and let's work on that together and fix it. And when you run out of ideas, or where you need other support, where you need to talk to somebody that you don't know who that is, I can help you find that person. I can help you get through the hurdles that you might be facing. And look, one of the old messages that we have is talk to a trusted adult. And you know, who's more trusted in New Zealand than Judy Bailey, in all honesty? And it's great that people do talk to trusted adult, but make sure if you are that trusted adult, that you are well informed, that you do know how to help them. And if you're not, if you don't feel you are the best informed person to help your children, make sure you find somebody that is, and convey that to your kids. Talk to them about who that person is. If you really do feel that it's not you, that you can't be the right person, that you don't understand the technology well enough, then find a friend, find a family member, find someone to be that nominated person, that nominated trusted adult for your children, and let them know who that is. Have that conversation ahead of time. Don't just have the conversation when the smoke's coming out of the ears and everybody's panicking. To nick a message from other agencies that are quite into being prepared ahead of time, a lot of this is about understanding what the challenges might be, understanding who can provide that help. There's a myriad of agencies that might be there to support your young people in the various agencies, in the various endeavours that they have, and the various challenges that they have. Part of that might be familiarising yourself with the platforms that your young people use, understand what those platforms do, understand how to report content, understand how to complain about users, understand how the platforms that they use work. Ask them to talk you through those platforms. You don't need to snoop, you don't need to spy. Talk to them about what it is that they use. Don't grab the phones off them and demand that they unlock it and say, show me everything, I need to read everything. Talk to them about what it is that they do and ask them how those platforms look and how the safety services within those platforms function. Because it really is about building that toolkit in the same way that civil defence might tell you to put water under your house and make sure you've got plenty of cans of beans for a couple of weeks worth of eating without supermarkets. It's the same for you as a parent with a young person that's using technology. Make sure you have what you need at your disposal: phone numbers, website addresses, the platform names themselves, the help agencies. Make sure you're aware of where all these things are when the situations, ahead of when the situations arise. Because maybe at that point you're not going to be thinking as straight when somebody tells you there's a problem that they don't know how to deal with, and you find it challenging or you find it difficult to understand. Make sure you have that in some place that you know that you can go to grab, even if this is a notebook or in a document somewhere online, but make sure you've got that at your disposal, because when it does, if it does hit the fan, as they say, make sure you're in the right space to respond. And that's me.
Cool. Wow. Amazing. Okay, what I want to know is, Kieran, what do you think about all of that?
I do actually think Sean has kind of hit it on the head with that one. I think it always seems to be the automatic response of parents to when something goes wrong. It's just, give me your phone, we're locking it in a safe, you're never having it again, I'm going through all the messages and this is what you're going to do. It is really, really about building that connection with young people and taking the time to try and understand them and understand their problems and work through it with them. Often we find that young people just want someone to talk to. They actually know what they want to do and they kind of know what they need to do. It's just about being able to sit back and talk it through with someone and listen to their ideas and their advice. But at the end of the day, it just really is about empowering young people to take control of their lives and their lives online.
Do you think there's an element of, because the issues that generations go through sometimes change with, like, I guess, technology coming in, that the way we're listening needs to change, and also like some people's problems might seem quite trivial, but just kind of leaving that judgment at the door and just being like, okay, whatever it is you're dealing with, it's obviously very large for you and let's help you through that?
I always say this and people always laugh at me, but like, I'm already old. I could go into a high school now and I could go into a primary school now and have no idea about apps I'm using and about technology using. I've been out of school for 3 years now, and that's just how fast it happens. So I really think it is this whole digital online world my parents didn't grow up in, but it's the young people of today that are. So I think there definitely is that there is the issues that they had when they were growing up are completely different to the issues that young people are having growing up today. So I think there is some sort of it is difficult to understand sometimes what the problems are.
I relate to the saying that you're old. I've been saying that for years. Everyone's like, you're under 30. I'm like, yeah, but things change real fast. Yeah. Okay, so let's have a look at some of these things, and this is quite a meaty topic, so we won't be able to cover everything. I guess, what do I want to talk about? Can we talk about the unconventional wisdom with social media and parenting that you want to sort of impart, if there is any?
The unconventional wisdom?
Yep.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think for us, part of that is, and I think just to go back a little bit, that there is a massive digital divide. I think about when NetSafe began in the business, all of the risks that we thought were around were based on the risks that we saw from old broadcast media. You know, everybody was obsessed with pornography, and that was seen as the worst possible thing. And then when people began to be able to, you know, present themselves online, when the social media kind of revolution occurred, obviously the risks changed. I think, you know, that if there is some unconventional wisdom for parents, it is that you need to be engaged in this space in order to actually be able to make rational and reasonable judgments about what it is that young people are doing. If you still base your fear, and, you know, obviously fear is a difficult thing to get over, but if your fear is based on what you used to experience or the things that you remember being difficult, the truth is the likelihood is you're completely missing the mark in terms of what it is that your young people are dealing with. And I think that's what leads to that kind of panic that you're talking about, where somebody says, look, I've got this problem with this kid, and the immediate response is, well, if I just grab the phone, if I just close down all your accounts, then you won't have a problem with that kid anymore, right? Because that's kind of the way that we used to deal with things. When I was at school, if I had a problem with a kid, my parents would come to the school, and their parents would come to the school, and everybody would deal with it, and we'd be put in different classes, and therefore that doesn't happen in a globally connected network of billions of people, you know, with multiple points every second. It can't happen. So, but you know, the intent is right for parents most of the time, but without actually having some credible experience of these spaces, it does two things. It means that your theories are probably a bit shot, but it also means that the young people, your kids that you're talking to, have a little less faith in you every time you come up with a rubbish solution, because you're not investing the time to work out what it is that's actually going on.
So where do you think, for the parents who are watching, like, where can they go, and what is some practical places? Like, should they be reading articles online, or are there any like good sources, or even any like youth bloggers who are kind of talking about this stuff and like highlighting, you know, exactly what young people are going through today?
I think almost a big thing is that parents should take the time to just try and understand the platforms that their like children and young people are using. Take the time so you know what a like is, you know how Snapchat works, you know how the different platforms work, because the last thing a young person wants when they come to you is to have to sit there and explain that. So this is Snapchat, and I take a photo, and then I send it, and then someone opens it, and then it disappears after 5 seconds, and then I can't show you the photo anymore. Because when they sit there and have to go through all of that before they can actually get to the problem, it's really, really disheartening, and it's kind of like Sean said, the more they come to you and you give them rubbish advice because you don't know what a like is, and you don't understand where it went and why they can't get it back to show you, it's really exhausting, and it kind of blocks off that connection with you.
You know, I think in terms of, you know, valuable people that can talk to, valuable sort of influential young people. It's going to sound really glib, but their own kids, because they are a massive source of that information. They are right there, contextual in terms of what it is their kids are doing by asking them what their kids are doing. But I mean, you know, there is that real fear that that leap of faith thing, the kind of stepping over the precipice. No parent wants to sound like that they're an idiot, and sometimes that first. So this chat snap stuff that you do, tell me about it. It is a difficult first line, and can cause real problems in terms of your authenticity in the future. So, I mean, it sounds quite weird. Other people's kids might be a good place to start without damaging the reputation. So your friends' kids or nieces and nephews, those kind of things. But if you really are concerned, then there are lots of agencies that you can work with. Try talking to your kids' school about some of this. Ring NetSafe. You know, we have a helpline for people, and it's not just for people that are struggling with a terrible situation right now. It's also for people that are looking for proactive advice. We're there to help parents. We're there to help young people. And I know that's a shameless plug for NetSafe, but that's exactly what we do. So if you really are struggling with that very first step, maybe we can support you in getting to the point, but ultimately the best source of information has to be your own kids.
I think you're allowed to plug if you're the expert in this situation.
Cool, net safe.
I want to talk a little bit about wasting time. So when I was in my early 20s, I had a lot of rhetoric around people who looked at me being on my phone and they were like, you're wasting time, you're messing around, like get off it, go do something real. And I was like, I run my entire business from my device. And so if I'm on my device and I'm doing something, I'm also a community manager and my entire community is online and there's like tens of thousands of people in there, right? And so, but people will be like, oh, you're just messing around, you're like scrolling through, you want likes for validation, all this stuff. And I was like, actually, I'm trying to work here or do this, or I just connected, you know, that person in Australia to that person in Sweden and now they're going to do business together. How can we change the rhetoric in the business world and also with parents around like actually some of the stuff that people are doing online is actually really useful, and that maybe it's just different, you know, it's a different age, it's a different way of doing things, and we actually need to understand that it's not good or bad, it just really is that difference.
The big message we used to push through Sticks and Stones, especially in the early days, was that online is real life. There is no longer this separate world on your phone and the separate real world. They are just so interconnected. And so I really think it is kind of just accepting that and understanding that, is that our devices now just connect us with so much, and being on them doesn't necessarily mean you're wasting time. Like you said, you can do business through them. But on the other side, there definitely is, you know, that sort of endless scrolling, and I'm guilty of it when I should be studying. But I think it's about teaching young people and teaching everyone about, you know, what is actually productive and what's not, and also accepting that this is an incredible opportunity. We are so interconnected. We've never ever had sort of the ability to connect with the amount of people that we can now. And so yeah, I think it really just is sort of changing that understanding and accepting that online is real life.
In the lift on the way up here, travelling 14 floors, there were lots of respectably dressed, business-looking people. Almost every one of them had their phone in front of them. I'm sure some of them were doing business, but I'm sure some of them were also tweeting about Game of Thrones. I think that there's a definite prejudice, I think I go as far as to say it is that young person plus phone equals waste of time. And I think that you're exactly right, that idea of the online world versus the real world, it has been incredibly damaging and incredibly dangerous for parents and adult understanding of what it is that young people do with technology. And you know, over time that will disappear because we're all at it. I am old. I know you both said you feel old. I am old. I use technology a lot. I'm on my phone a fair bit. Some of that is recreational and some of that is legitimate business use. And so I think over time that will change. But that kind of generalization that we've allowed to happen really speaks to the fact that we're not engaging with young people around what it is that we're doing. We're not understanding it. That, you know, that it talks to that kind of screen time question that parents often ask us. You know, how much is exactly the right amount, and when can I stop the clock and say I will not? You're 1 minute over the 2 hour or 3 hour, 4 hour, whatever it is. You must stop today. You know, which tool can I install on my network so that it will stop and cut it off after 2 hours? The truth is that, you know, not every minute online is created equally, and if it's 2 hours running your business, being a community manager, out there doing, you know, quality work for your community, I don't want you to stop that after 2 hours and then, you know, go out and run in the paddock or whatever it is that people often tell young people to do after they've been online. But it's an easy thing to kind of say that, you know, if I can just manage that to 2 hours, then I know that that's all they do, and then everything else is good after that. But that's easy because it doesn't actually mean anybody needs to work out what it is that people are doing. You know, that there are some activities that you wouldn't want your kids doing 5 minutes of online, and then you certainly wouldn't want them doing 2 hours of that. But there are things that you would be quite happy for them to do hours. You know, if you're, use this as an example, if you are in a group of kids writing a script for a documentary that you're planning to put together and release independently, I'd love it if my kids did that kind of stuff. I mean, they actually play a lot of Fortnite. But if my kids were doing that, then I don't know if I would have a particular problem about how much time they were doing it, because they're engaged in a useful endeavour, they're socialising with other people, they're learning, they're picking up skills. why wouldn't I allow them or want them to conduct themselves on that? I mean, you know, maybe there's a posture thing, and maybe that's not great, and a mixture of all sorts of activity are great for young people, but this idea that is necessarily all people are doing, or that's a problem, is something that we need to get over fairly quickly.
There's a lot to unpack in there. I had an experience where, you know, social media and I guess the rise of like mental health issues, anxiety, social anxiety, that you know, we're really connected now, but also we're kind of not. So there's this like incredible loneliness that's becoming a quite serious problem. And I think it's always been a problem, but now it's even more so because you feel like you're connected, but you're really not. I had an experience, well, it wasn't my experience, it was someone else, where someone told me a story where they were actually at school, and they had, like, they were being quite severely bullied, and social media for them was actually a bit of respite. Because it allowed them to find communities where they could find their people and their tribe, where they just didn't get that at school, and actually finding those online groups that suited them and like their kind of vibe actually saved their life in the end, which I thought was quite interesting, because a lot of people go, you know, social media is terrible, you can, you know, develop all these mental health issues and you get bullied, and obviously that's true, but I'd never actually seen the opposite of that, where people are actually finding people that they didn't have the opportunity to be connected to and get outside of their world and their head. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think that really sort of speaks to the whole when parents kind of panic and they're like, oh no, we're locking the phone away and that's how we're going to deal with it. But they forget that by locking the phone away, not only are you sort of disconnecting the person with the bully, but you're also disconnecting them with the potential community that they have built and with their friends and with other people they've found. And I think the really important thing for sort of dealing with these issues of mental health is making sure that you just have that support system around you, and that you are speaking to your kids, and that your kids know that they can come to you. And it is really about building that sort of base so that when things go wrong, they've got that to fall back on. And that is separate of the online world, and that is, you know, oh, this is happening, I'm going to go and talk to mum about it, or talk to grandma, or I had a bad day and someone's being kind of a dickhead, I'm going to go and hang out with my brothers. Like, you know, it's just really that, yes, there are all mental illness and all this is at an all-time high, but I don't think that can solely be credited to the online world. That it has its benefits and it has definitely has its downfalls, but it's just really about setting up that support system that you can fall back on at the end of the day.
What are some of the practical tips in terms of safety that parents can take with their kids, or even, you know, like young people, or anyone can take to be safer online, and to if they're going to use it and they're going to be there, like how can they do that well and safely?
Well, there are some, you know, at the very fundamental level. I mean, there's the questions of of who you interact with and what you share. So, you know, be very deliberate and mindful about the associations that you make, and audit those associations over time. That sounds like a really unsocial media way to say it. What I'm trying to say is befriend people when you realise that actually you're in networks with people that you probably don't need to be or want to be anymore. If people are on net harmful to you, then maybe that's someone that you consider not including in your social network, whether that's feasible or not. Think about the information that you share openly versus the information that you share with a narrow group of friends. We know that lots of young people have, you know, like take for example a very public Instagram versus a slightly smaller group Instagram versus a really very close Instagram, and you know, that's a really smart and sensible way of kind of measuring what you release to different people, whilst, you know, still maintaining that public profile. You know, I think a lot of parents would probably be horrified if they knew that their kids had 3 Instagram accounts, but just saying, parents, your kids have 3 Instagram accounts. That they use that in order to manage their online, and I think that's a really, you know, in a lot of ways, a very smart way to do it. So there's things at those level in terms of, so, you know, your privacy settings, how much you share, and who you share that with. As parents, you know, you point before about the isolation and the opposite of social media. That they're absolutely true, but let's not downplay the fact that if, you know, some young people are experiencing feelings of isolation and loneliness online, that sometimes online can have a habit of amplifying those feelings that are already there. So yes, there are support networks out there, and, you know, for a lot of people, those support networks absolutely are a lifeline, you know, and so we've got to be cognizant of that, but also that amplification issue that things can spiral out of control for some young people, and parents need to start being aware of what that might look like. So, and you know, these kind of symptoms, if you like, are similar to lots of things that we ask parents to look out for, but that sudden feeling of isolation, the fact that kids are withdrawing from activities that they may have participated in before, when friend networks, either physical or online, change dramatically, when suddenly people are saying, I'd rather do this rather than that, and so, you know, maybe they used to be interested in a sports team or a choir or a performing arts group, and suddenly they're saying, I'm not going to that today because I'm doing this thing online. All of these might be signs that young people are experiencing issues either with the people they're relating to, or it may be their own personal time management issues, or they may be becoming a little too interested in one activity. They may be becoming a little bit mono in terms of the things that they're doing. So those kind of signs are things that parents need to watch out for. But then at that point, that's the point. That's the leap of faith. That's the part where they need to be able to walk in and say, "Talk to me about this. Tell me about this. Not you must tell me about this, but tell me what's going on. I've noticed this. Reassure me, or tell me that you need help. And if you do, what can I do to be there to support you?"
Yeah, I think it just in terms of we get taught from such a young age that you don't talk to strangers and that you don't give random people your phone number or your home address, and online is no different. It's just about educating kids, you know, that you don't give your phone numbers to strangers, and spending 5 minutes going through settings with them and familiarising yourself to be like, okay, so these are the people that can see the information you're sharing, this is the information you're sharing, and it's about the education. We don't stop kids from playing on playgrounds and swings because they're going to fall off and hurt themselves. We shouldn't be stopping kids from using the online world because we're scared of it. It should be about just taking that time to educate yourself and know your way around. The Facebook and Instagram settings, they're so comprehensive now that you just have so much control over what you're putting out there. And I think it's just about taking that time with young people so that you're educated and so that they're educated.
Kieran, do you think there is do you teach at Sticks and Stones like confidence or self-worth? Obviously there's like the like economy that people talk about, all the dopamine hits and all of that validation stuff. Do you think there's an element of we need to be teaching these like kind of soft skills so that people actually know how to interact or they know like where to get their sense of self from if they struggle with that in the real life, in the real world, IRL?
This is actually something quite new that we're working on. We've just launched an ambassador program with Facebook, and that has kind of been the main focus. We had a workshop towards the end of last year, and we sort of sat down and we were like, you know, what are the issues that you are having online? And it really was that whole, everyone gets so worried about how many likes you get, or, you know, no one commented on my photo, but 5 people commented on her photo, so does that mean that she's better than you? And so I think it really is, I think parents often sort of stress out and like, oh no, this online stuff, it just overrules everything. But I'm sure back in the day, I'm sure that parents, like, you know, they got brought up being like, this is what makes you important and this is what makes you special, and so I don't see why that just because we have social media those messages should stop. And so I think again it's really about just educating, about having those conversations.
That's quite interesting. Sean, there's a question online that's come through for you actually. It is, do you see any times of the year you feel parents need more support? If so, what are these and what might be the difference versus the rest of the year? For example, school holidays.
Yeah, I think probably the one that really stands out to us is the weeks before the start of a new school year. So long holiday, often physically, or possibly physically away from friends, but a lot of activity online. So, and depending on how your young person feels about the return to school or the dynamics that have gone on, the relationships that have come and gone in that space of time, 6 or 7 weeks is a long time to be physically regularly apart, and then all that coming back together can lead to some feelings of some fairly strong anxiety in some. And I think, you know, in the run-in, whilst the stationery packs are being bought, we can often lose sight of the fact that that there's a fear and dread occasionally, or occasionally in some young people. I think that's one of those times where parents need to be able to sit down and say, you know, like I say, whilst we're checking the stationery, we're also checking how do you feel about going back to school, what's been happening online, how is your friend A, friend B, friend C, how have things gone over the summer holidays, and making sure there isn't a sort of harbouring feeling of I'm walking into something that I don't like, or there's something embarrassing online that's happened and I'm about to face that physically when I get back to school. So that's a really good time to be talking to kids, your kids especially in that time. I mean, generally there are peaks and troughs based on whatever it is that your school or your community or your context is doing. End of the year becomes a similar thing as well, in that anticipation of what's happening over the summer, who's going to be hanging out with who. So those are certainly peak times for NetSafe. But again, your kids will probably be the ones that will let you know if you ask what those important times are.
Can you, we've got about 5 minutes left. It's been a really interesting session so far. I just want to talk about, so, you know, kids and everyone's very different. We're all very different people. And I think sometimes we can just have this complete blanket approach and generalist view to dealing with issues or dealing with opportunities. And so can you give some advice on how to understand, like, your kids' online behaviour depending on who they are as a person? So maybe I might be stereotyping, but someone who's naturally more introverted might actually be more suited to actually playing all of those online games, and understanding that there actually might be an avenue to be social, but social in a way that's actually really amazing for your kids, and vice versa with, you know, kind of, you know, extroverts or it just like around their interests. Do you have any advice for kind of tailoring to the specific young person?
Well, from our perspective, there's you can't force your kids to do one thing that as a parent. Forget my time at NetSafe. You may have this image of what your kids should do and want to do, but you can't force your kids to do. I used before that phrase "run in the paddock" because my wife uses it a fair bit about certainly when our kids were younger, they shouldn't be here. They should be out running in the paddock. I live in central Auckland. There are no paddocks, but that's the kind of thing that borrowed from our own experience. I think you have to allow, to some extent, your kids to lead you down that path, and you know not saying you give your kids carte blanche to do whatever it is, you know, how much of what they want to do, when they want to do it, but actually walking alongside your kids down these paths is the only thing that we can do to you know, if your kids are, as you say, that naturally introverted, they like to game, play those games, actually physically play those games and work out what it is they're doing. Be there alongside them when they're talking to these people. You know, it's also, you know, an assumption to say they play games, but there's a real social aspect to them. Yes, there are social aspects to lots of games, but there may be environments that you don't want your kids to socialise in. And until we do that stuff alongside our kids, we're all guessing.
Do you have any thoughts on this?
I think Sean is right on the money with that. I think there is no blanket approach to what someone's online life should look like. It's going to be different. I know that, say, my brother and I are very different people, and our online presence would have been very, very different growing up. But I think, you know, my parents, they knew us, obviously, raised us for however many years, and so I think it really is that just being there and being supportive and being alongside your young people. And there isn't a blanket approach. There isn't a magic sticker and, oh, this is what you should be doing, and if something goes wrong, this is how you're going to deal with it. It's just about facilitating those conversations with young people and taking the time to understand what they're doing and what they're interested in, and why they're doing that. It's
quite interesting, when I look at my own relationship with my own online use, I used to get quite mad at myself for watching all of this content online, because I was like, oh, like, should you be watching all this content? It's a bit of a waste of time, maybe you're procrastinating. And then over time I actually realised that the content I was seeing with watching people deal with their own issues on the screen, even if they were maybe not real, actually provoked myself to process my own emotions, and like what I actually got from the learning and lessons of watching quite a lot of content actually played out in my real life and helping me sort of deal with a lot of the situations that I was going through, which I kind of, when I finally understood, I was like, oh, that's actually quite useful. Okay, so the last thing that I want to touch on is just something I've been thinking about a lot lately, which is, we were told that you can only be connected to 150 people in the world. I don't think that's true anymore. Like that's kind of like a previous generation, and now I think it's way beyond that. I don't know what the average of being connected is, but I've got so many followers, and like a lot of people do. So how do we deal with that? And like how many people can we actually keep? And is there a number, or how do we kind of think about this in a more modern way with how many platforms we're using and how many people we're connected to?
I think the really cool thing about the online world is that you can stay connected to people that you might have had quite short interactions with in sort of the real world, but I definitely find that those people who I'm really connected to online and in real life. And I don't think that has changed. I think the only thing that has sort of developed is we have the ability, I'm still friends on Facebook with people that I swam with when I was sort of 8 years old. And it's really cool that I can sort of, somewhere sort of in the background, I kind of keep up to date with what they're doing. But then the people who are still my really, really good friends, I'm really connected to online, but also there's that sort of in real life sort of presence.
I think you're spot on. Those kind of close, intimate relationships that we have are probably difficult to manage any more than those numbers. But I think the one thing that has changed, that the technology has allowed us to broadcast, I guess, other personas, and we can have followers of that persona. We can interact with people in that persona. It's not necessarily all of us. It's a part of our existence. It's like mini fame in some degrees. I think when parents look at young people that are doing that, and they try and equate that to their own knowledge of friendship, that becomes problematic, because how can you possibly have 10,000 friends? How can you possibly interact with all of these people? You could easily have 10,000 followers because they're interested in your thoughts or your opinions on a certain area. And I think when parents start to understand those different types or different levels of relationship, it'll make life an awful lot easier and less stressful for a lot of parents.
Awesome, that's great perspective. So we've come to time, so I think the last thing that I would like to do is just, you guys have both phenomenal organisations, so just run through your kind of your help stuff again, so that people can go check out your resources for themselves.
Sure. So NetSafe is a 24/7 helpline for people that are experiencing harm online. You can get to us at netsafe.org.nz or 0508 NetSafe, and there's 24/7 help, direct help, and also resources on our website should you need to get some self-help in there as well.
So we have sort of two key platforms. We have our Sticks and Stones, which is really, really about young people empowering themselves and giving them the tools to deal with their online life. And you can find us at sticksandstones.co.nz. And then on the other hand, we have Icon, which is an online web tool for young people who, when they're experiencing issues, or even if they just want to take control of their sort of online presence, they can jump on that. It's an interactive sort of website, and it helps to connect them with all the resources that are out there to help them in that specific area, and that's at icon.org.nz.
Awesome, thanks so much for joining us today, and thanks so much for watching Techweek TV. Have a good day. Awesome, that was fun.